It's time to make sports talk great again with Curt Schilling and Steve Deace.
Greetings, I'm Steve Deace. Welcome to The Blaze. He is World Series champion and future Hall of Famer Curt Schilling. Each day we do our very best to just talk sports, at least as much as the sports world will allow. We put 25 minutes on the clock, get to as many of the day's big topics as we can, whether you're watching us on The Blaze here on YouTube. If you are watching on YouTube, give us a like and a subscribe, or if you're listening to the podcast, if you would give us a subscribe and a 5-star review there, we would appreciate it. Curt, are you ready to go?
I am ready to go. Very much ready to go.
All right, we are focused today on the aftermath of the NFL Scouting Combine and the subplots therein beginning now. Let's start with your childhood favorite team, the Arizona Cardinals. So this really began with Steve Keim, your general manager. He said last week when asked if Josh Rosen, now you'll recall, I'm not a Josh Rosen guy, all right? I need a quarterback that actually inspires a team. And I just didn't feel like Josh Rosen was that guy when I watched him at UCLA. And I think that if I'm going to spend a first-round pick on a quarterback, then I need him to give me something extra. Because this is such a high-risk, high-value position. And I just saw in Josh Rosen a guy that, you know, in the classic case of in his jockey shorts looks great. But I don't see a leader of men. I don't see a guy that inspires people. He's also had a slew of concussion issues in college already. So you wonder about how many more hits he can take in the pros. So last year, the Cardinals, under a previous coaching staff, traded up to make him the number one pick, needing a replacement for Carson Palmer. Now you have a new coach, Cliff Kingsbury, who has the exact same agent as Kyler Murray, who said while he was the coach at Texas Tech before becoming the Arizona Cardinal coach, that if he had the number one overall pick in the draft, he'd pick Kyler Murray. Well, now he does have the number one overall pick in the draft. Steve Keim, the general manager of the Arizona Cardinals, was asked, hey, is Josh Rosen still your quarterback? This was before the combine, and he said, oh, yeah, for now. Okay. So we go to the combine, and lo and behold, Kyler Murray measures about an inch taller than anybody was thinking. His hand size. Now, why is this a big thing for fans that don't understand? Particularly when you're the kind of, first of all, an NFL football is bigger to hold than a college football. That's why there was so much debate about deflated balls in that playoff game a few years ago with the Patriots and the Colts, because the less air made it easier to grip in the poor weather, okay? Secondly, usually the size of your extremities tends to line up with the size of your overall frame. Not always, but the taller you are, usually the longer your legs are, the bigger your hands are, the bigger your feet are. All right? Well, in this case, even though he's an inch shorter than Baker Mayfield, a little more than an inch shorter, his hands are actually bigger. And that's an even bigger factor when you're the kind of running quarterback Kyler Murray is, because the ball's going to be out there a lot, and you want to make sure you've got a pretty good grip on that thing, right? Warren Moon's in the Hall of Fame. He's got more fumbles than any player in the NFL history because he had small hands. That's why he wasn't a high draft pick when he came out of college and had to go to the Canadian League. So Kyler Murray's measurements basically he is Russell Wilson. And so everybody's saying now, hey, I don't want to be the team that passed on Russell Wilson for 3 rounds and has lived to regret it ever since. And now there's talk that the Arizona Cardinals may put Josh Rosen on the market and go ahead and draft Kyler Murray number 1 overall in the NFL draft. So the question on the table for us today, will they number 1? Should they number 2? Let's start there. Curt, I'll begin with you.
Well, let's a couple things. First of all, physically, he's Pedro Martinez. Pedro was about a foot shorter than you wanted your starting pitcher to be. He had massive hands, incredibly long arms. He had all the measurements of a 6'5" guy. And those are all a big deal. Here's my concern. I don't know if they will, and that's a problem, in my opinion, because this screams to me of making the same mistake they've made for the past 30 years, and the reason they've never been in the playoffs is because you don't spend a number 1 pick on somebody who might be great. We're going to talk about the combine and the players and where they rank. And I don't even think, I agree with you, I don't even think he's the best quarterback in the draft. If you're going to draft a quarterback number 1, it's not Kyler Murray. But I've never seen so much discussion and so much perceived value change in 1 inch. Because that's what this is. Mm-hmm. He measured over 5'10". Everybody was stunned about it. That's still incredibly short for a quarterback. Mm-hmm. And I'm going to bet, I haven't done this, I haven't done the research, but I'm going to bet if you go to the Hall of Fame and you take a measurement of all the modern day quarterbacks, not the Fran Tarkingtons, but the guys that are playing in the last 15, 20 years, you're not going to see very many.
Well, no,
guys.
there will be Russell Wilson, and we'll define short. Are you saying less than 6 feet?
Okay. Yes, under 6
All right,
foot.
because Baker Mayfield's basically 6 feet. I think
Right.
Drew Brees is a little bit less than 6 feet, about 5'11" or so. Okay, so you're talking Drew Brees, you're talking Russell Wilson, and
Let's put it this way, it's a rarity.
and that would be the only two.
Right.
Yes.
Right. And I hope the kid does great. I'm excited for him. But you don't. The Cardinals are, well, first of all, they have a trouble with Pac-12 quarterbacks. Let's be real clear about that. I mean, the Leinart and Rosen, and I mean, but
Now, Carson Palmer worked out. Now, they didn't draft him. You
Right.
remember, they traded for him. Okay. But here's the thing. I share all of your skepticism with Kyler Murray. All right. But if you ask me straight up, who would you rather have? Who do you think there's a better chance to build a team around? I would, over Josh Rosen, I'd take him. I would. And even though I don't think he's a guy that lights up a room either and is Mr. Electric leadership either, the level of athleticism he puts on the field, see, to me, he's everything I don't like about Josh Rosen, but he has all the he brings the things that that Josh Rosen doesn't have. So I wouldn't make either one of them my franchise quarterback.
No.
Okay.
Well,
but I will say this: if I'm going to hire the college coach with the air raid offense, and then if I'm going to make a gamble like that as a franchise, I go all in then, and I do make this guy my quarterback because he fits the system much better than Josh Rosen does.
But I would tell you, this is not a pick you gamble with. You just don't. I mean, you've gotten burned in the past doing the very same thing you're doing. There are 3 or 4 players to me that are potentially franchise players available that I know, short of an injury, this guy's a lock. He's a lock, and we'll talk about some of those guys.
So here's really the debate I'm thinking. If I'm the head coach and GM in Arizona, this is the question I'm asking myself. It's more likely I can be a playoff team with Josh Rosen. A 9-7, 10-6 team that can get to the playoffs every now and then. Okay, basically Matt Stafford with less arm talent.
See, I think he's got a cannon.
I think Matt Stafford does. I don't think Josh Rosen has arm talent like Matt Stafford does.
I think he has a cannon.
But here's the question: what's a better route to a Super Bowl? Would I get from Josh Rosen and I make a conventional pick, or I trade Josh Rosen, I get another number 1 or maybe a couple of number 2s. I build the depth of my team. And this guy creates a matchup nightmare. Now, I think it's a feast or famine pick.
Yeah, but
I think you're all fired in 3 years. Or you're in the Super Bowl, one or the other.
You can't. I don't believe if you think Josh Rosen's going to bring back 2 number 1s, then
no, I said or 2. I think you could get maybe 2 number 2s for him. I do think you can get that.
Okay, but I think that's insane. I think that because if he's worth that, then you don't trade him. There's no way. I think he's going to be good. I don't know about the leadership stuff, but you're taking a pick. Look back on the number, and you can go back to Ryan Leaf, all these other top 1 or 2 or 3. Those top 3 pick. I don't know where the cutoff line is for you, Steve, but for me in most drafts, it's 4 or 5. There are 4 or 5 players who literally are locks. There's just no chance this guy isn't going to be a Hall of Famer if he stays healthy. Maybe sometimes there's only 1 or 2. But Kyler Murray, I don't believe, is one of those.
Okay.
And if he is, I have 55 questions about how he might be that, which if I have 1 or 2 questions about that pick and that player, I don't take him on top.
I think there's a much better chance Kyler Murray's a Hall of Famer than Josh Rosen.
Okay.
And I also think there's a better chance Kyler Murray flames out than Josh Rosen, too.
Yep.
All right? So that's
the upside, right?
Yes.
It's the upside.
Yeah. So that's now, I would say this. If they had not gotten a coach like Cliff Kingsbury who plays the exact college offense of Kyler Murray, I don't think you're even having this conversation because you don't take the kind of risk that you're talking about.
Well,
but you already took a massive risk, Curt, in hiring this coach.
I get that.
So if you're going to do it now, you go all in and let him embed his system. That's what I'm saying. You let him go all the way in. Because you don't want to hire the college coach, make him stick with the 6'5" immobile pro style quarterback, go 6-10 in 2 years, and you can his ass, and then you just wasted all these draft picks. If you're going to bring in that coach, then you let him go all the way with his system, and he flames out. And you know what? Here's the thing: if it flames out in 2 or 3 years, you're drafting Trevor Lawrence or Tua Tagovailoa. You see what I'm saying?
The problem there, though, is that offense you talk about requires a lot more than just the quarterback.
Well, here's the thing: it requires more than the quarterback, but it cannot work without the right quarterback either. It's impossible.
No, that's fair. But I think, let's put it this way: I'll be definitely disappointed if they take him number 1 overall.
All right. Well, we'll let the fans decide. Let's get to the rest of the combine. The whole looks like Tarzan plays like Jane factor, and is this the underwear Olympics? Here's the thing: people watch this the wrong way because of the way it's presented by the network. Okay. Yeah. In the NFL Network.
Let me just say, hold on. I just want to interrupt you and tell you, in reading what you were writing, I agree. I think the NFL Combine and the stuff that comes out of the Combine is pre-sabermetrics football.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great way of looking at it. See, the reality is the kinds of drills that really tell you how great of a player is going to be. See, Aaron Donald was the number 13 pick in the draft. Okay. And people are like, man, he ran a 4.6 140. How often does a defensive lineman run 40 yards? Never is the answer.
Well, and running 40 yards with pads on is different than running 40 yards in shorts.
You bet it is.
And I don't care what people say about running the running speed. It's not just about that. Pure speed doesn't translate to pads for some guys.
So most of the drills that tell a scout and a coaching staff how a guy projects to the next level aren't really shown, because they basically set these up to use Olympic, long jumps, broad jumps, 40-yard dashes, because audiences are used to watching that in the Olympics. Right. They're not used to watching a football practice, right? Nope. So I want to show the audience the drills that do matter. Okay?
Yes, and I agree with everyone.
All right, so let's go with cornerbacks. All right, 3-cone drill. Without explaining that is a test of hip smoothness, how quickly you change direction. All right. So
you're moving a triangle.
Yes. Yeah. And why is that required? Well, because you have sluggos, slants, and goes. Receivers alter their routes, and you got to be able to, without losing speed, quickly react to what an offensive player. That's much more important than a corner from Ole Miss no one ever heard of running a 4.29 40. Yeah, that guy ought to be trying out for the U.S. Olympic team. He's not a football player. All right.
Be very curious to see where current superstar NFL cornerbacks would fit in this.
Yeah, they would all be at about 6.5 or lower is where the best guys would be. Okay. Right. Then let's go to defensive linemen. So it doesn't really matter what they run in the 40-yard dash. I'm sorry, with safeties. With safeties, I do want to look at a vertical leap. Why? Because most of what they're asked to do is to come over the top and break up a pass with the ball at its highest point. Right. Okay.
Well, it's one of the reasons why you can draft a 5'9" defensive back.
Yeah.
Because he plays like he's 6'6".
Yes. And so here were the guys with the best vertical leaps at the safety position. Okay.
That's almost 4 feet, by the way.
Yeah, that's incredible. That's absolutely incredible. I saw one female NFL reporter tweeted out, I am 4'11" and I'm watching guys that literally from a standing position can almost jump over me. It's crazy. Yeah. It's crazy.
Okay. Please don't forget these guys are all 265 pounds. Well,
not the safeties, but they're like 210, 15, 20 pounds.
Boys.
Yeah. All right, let's go to the defensive lineman now. All right, so this is what's called the short shuttle, all right? Meaning how quickly you get from one point to another, all right, and then back.
This is explosiveness. This is for these guys are edge rushers, guys that can beat a double team because they can be in the gap quicker than the gap can close.
So everybody's like, well, Nick Bosa only ran a 4.8 140. He's not that fast. Look at that short shuttle time. All right.
Yeah.
Nick Bosa's not going to be asked to run 40 yards a lot. By the way, Rashawn Gary from my Michigan Wolverines ran a 4.58 40. Guess where he's not on the top 5 of the list? Right there. Right. And if you go watch Chase Winovich, who's number 1, look at Chase Winovich's sack and tackles for loss totals as a Michigan Wolverine compared to Rashawn Gary, who had more. Chase Winovich. And when you look at that drill, now you know why. Because in the short space, Chase Winovich is more explosive than Rashawn Gary was.
In baseball, free baseball fans, this is batting average versus on-base percentage.
Yes, that's another good way of looking at it, yes. Let's look at this next one, all right? Now, this gives you an idea of, now I do think this is what's called the 10-yard split for defensive linemen. Why a 10-yard split? Because this tells you that most of what they do in a given game all happens within 10 yards. All All right. And so everybody raved about Montez Sweat having a 4.41 40, the fastest ever for a defensive lineman. Dude,
Which is amazing.
That's amazing. You know what's more amazing? That 150 number, that's essentially the same number Aaron Donald had when he came out of college. All right.
Yeah.
And he's the 2-year reigning defensive player of the year in the NFL. So now when you see a 4.41 40 from Montez Sweat, now you know, hey, this guy's just not a runner. That speaks to his overall explosiveness, because he is explosive over a long haul and over a short haul. And by the way, look at the two names below him. There's Nick Bosa and Chase Winovich again. Yeah. So if you're wondering why is Nick Bosa, could he be the number one pick in the draft with a 4.81 40? Because in all the drills that he's actually going to be asked to do 70 times in a game, he's one of the best players in this draft at all those drills. All right. And then if you look now, one area where I do think speed is underrated, okay, is at the linebacker slot. Okay. Yeah. I think and because most linebackers today are asked to do more sideline to sideline, to cover downfield. So when you look at the speed at the linebacker positions, I think that's actually underrated, given where most players are asked to perform in the NFL today. Let me call that up here really quick.
This was amazing.
So you've got three linebackers here running 4.43 or better. Gary Johnson of Texas, Devin Bush at Michigan, and Devin White at LSU. Those numbers, to put that in perspective, there were only like a dozen wide receivers that ran that fast. Okay. They're running. These are 230-pound linebackers running faster than wide receivers and corners. All right, keep that. That's incredible athleticism. What you're talking about right there.
Yeah, and also those lateral movement drills. That's where linebackers, the same thing. I mean, lateral movement is everything in foot. Being able to go sideline to sideline and maintain that speed advantage you have is huge.
All right, so what I do, I'm a big draftnik. All right, so
that's not even.
I love it. So what I will do after the season's over and the guys have declared, I'll have my initial position ratings, and then I will do them again after the Senior Bowl. Most fans don't understand how important the Senior Bowl is, because it's the first time these guys will get pro-style coaching. Both teams are coached by NFL coaching staffs, and the practices are all on the NFL Network, and this is where they really, truly get tested. And you will see the vast majority of guys in the Senior Bowl are picked in the first 2-3 rounds of the draft every single year, because this is the most up-close scouting you can get a lot of these guys in an NFL environment. And then I update it again after the combine. And what I'm looking to see is there a differentiation between on-field production and how you test? And what I really want to see is when those things line up well, that's when you know you've got you always be leery when on-field production doesn't line up with the testing, or testing doesn't line up with the on-field production, particularly when the testing doesn't line up with the on-field production, all right? Because that may be a guy who's a great athlete. It doesn't mean he's instinctively a great football player. Okay?
And it also it brings into question that's where you can begin to see and scout effort.
Yes. Yeah. The athleticism in football helps, but it doesn't mean everything. Okay. Yeah. All right. So let's look at my updated ratings. Let's go through these. I've rated the positions and based on who I think the top 100 players in the draft are. So I have 7 quarterbacks that I would put right now in the top 100 of the draft, and I would have Dwayne Haskins slightly ahead of Kyler Murray. You have a quick hot take thought on that?
I don't. Here's what I want to do. I think part of what we continue to try and do is establish credibility as people who understand sports at a higher level. Because I've always said sports people can talk, and there's millions of people that can do this. I think what separates you is I've got a 5-page list of your prospects. Mm-hmm. Okay, I'm going to pull a name.
By the way, the asterisk means underclassmen is what that means.
Right. Okay, I'm going to pull a name out of different places here. Okay, and then I want to hear what you have to say about the player.
Okay.
And these are going to be players that not a lot of the hardest of hardcore fans have probably heard about in many cases.
All right.
But I want to start. Let's start with Arizona State wide receiver N'Keal Harry.
N'Keal Harry is your classic outside receiver, ball at the highest point. But here's the thing too: he's a tall frame 4.55 40 guy, which at his frame is not bad because he's a long strider, so he's going to make up a lot of ground with those strides. Here's what you really like about a guy with his frame though. Is he's also an excellent punt returner. So that's where you see in-space explosion, and he's gotten NFL coaching in the last year by your boy Herm Edwards there at Arizona State.
All right. And again, I thought some of this stuff was just beyond fascinating. Let me go with I think it's Ja'Kai Polite.
Ja'Kai Polite. You know what I love about Ja'Kai Polite? His Twitter handle is Retire Moms. Because his goal is for his mom, who worked 2 jobs his entire upbringing as a single mom. His goal is to retire her. This is a guy that kind of came out of nowhere for the Florida. He was kind of the symbol of Florida's resurgence in year 1 of Dan Mullen. He wasn't on anybody's preseason list going into this last year. New coaching staff comes in. Todd Grantham, a former NFL defensive coordinator, takes over the Florida defense, and he soars as one of the best edge guys in college football. Long, lean guy. Could be a situational pass rusher in a 4-3. Could be a designated edge defender in a 3-4.
All right, let me give you. I want to give a no-brainer because I want to hear why. I want to hear your reasons why. Keenan Williams is your number 1 on your overall 64.
Quinnen Williams. When I look at him, you're looking at a level of athletic explosion. When you're talking a man at 300 pounds running a 4.87 40, but then all of the other all the other explosion drills. And here's the thing too: when you watched an Alabama game this year, they did not have the depth they had in years past. You know, when Jonathan Allen was dominating there, he could come out of a game and there was a first-round pick behind him.
Yeah.
Right? They didn't have that kind of depth this year at Alabama. And when you watch Quinnen Williams, it didn't matter the system Oklahoma spread. It didn't matter if it was a power running game. He was unblockable, absolutely dominant every game, all week. And to me, I think he is the number 1 overall prospect in this draft.
Yeah, see, now, and that is absolutely my argument against Kyler Murray. That you're talking about Quinnen Williams. He's a lock, right? I mean, him and Sweat and Bosa are all 3 guys that I don't think anybody.
Now, I want to, with Montez Sweat, just to show folks, I'm not reacting just to his testing numbers. Montez Sweat's testing numbers affirm why I have him up here. He dominated at the Senior Bowl.
Yeah.
None of those tackles could block him. All week long, he dominated. Look at his production at Mississippi State. Dominant in production in the SEC. So when I see, I always favor production over your testing. But when you give me
exactly right.
Yeah, when you give me production and testing, that's when I know I've got an elite
Here's the
player.
thing. The measurements you're talking about, old school people didn't pay attention to. This is very much a Dustin Pedroia thing. There's some things you just can't scout about a player. When those intangibles align with a superstar physique, that's what these guys rate out to me as, right? Dustin Pedroia would have been a number 1 pick if he was 6'4".
Let me give you then, since you brought up Dustin Pedroia, and I know you love Julian Edelman, all right?
Yes.
So, you know, I'm like Dan Patrick. I hate the fact that there's this notion we have to compare players of the same skin color to other players. I will go out of my way to compare white guys to black guys and vice versa just because of how much I hate that, okay? But in this case, it's unavoidable. I predict in the next few years, of all the players in this draft, the one that will be Curt Schilling's favorite is Andy Isabella from your neck of the woods there.
UMass.
Slot receiver at UMass. That guy, I know there's this notion, white guy can't, I think he ran like a 4.35. His numbers, production numbers as a slot receiver, absolutely incredible. Well, Stevie played for UMass, so you have it backwards. That's why it's even more impressive. He was the only damn player they had. And every week, everybody's like, that's the only guy they got. Just put your whole defense on him. They still couldn't stop him, okay? Notice UMass's quarterbacks not getting drafted, which means he was getting so open, even UMass's quarterbacks could get him the ball when the other team knew he was going to get the ball. That is a guy, to me, as a slot receiver, is going to have a long career in the NFL. And I predict will be one of Curt Schilling's favorite players in the next few years.
But that's a Belichick pick.
Yeah, absolutely it is.
That's him being in the backyard. Let me go. Let me go. I'm gonna go on your big top 64. Your board.
And I have a top 64 because those are the guys that I think are graded as the top 2 round picks.
Yeah, they'll go the first day, right?
Or the first 2 days.
Yeah. Is it Kalen? Yeah, Kalen Saunders from Western Illinois.
Kalen Saunders from Western Illinois. You got to go on YouTube and Google Kalen Saunders backflip. Okay. Do you remember Jerry Ball played for my Lions in the the early 90s? Came out of SMU, and this squatty little guy was unblockable, and he could actually rush the passer as well. And uncanny athleticism for a fat dude. Okay. Now, Kalen Sanders is not nearly as fat as Jerry Ball was because guys are just better conditioned in general nowadays. But by today's standards, he's a fat guy, which means he would have been a skinny guy 20 years ago when Jerry Ball played. Okay, but he's a fat guy by today's standards. What I loved about him is he went down to the Senior Bowl, just dominated at the FCS level. So the first time he's going to play true competition is in that Senior Bowl, those Senior Bowl practices. More than held his own, crazy athleticism, and to me, if you're going to play a 3-4, you can't play a 3-4 if you don't have a nose tackle. It doesn't matter how good your edge guys are. Doesn't matter how good your linebackers are. If you don't have a two-gap guy in the middle, you have, that's a great analogy. Yep. If you don't have that two-gap plugger in the middle, you cannot play that defense. And he is a true, pure nose guard, if you ask me.
Yeah, and I mean I look at nose guard in the NFL like I look at defenseman in the NHL. Like you may have 0 sacks at the end of the year, but you could win Defensive Player of the Year because of what you end up doing to your other teammates and how you allow them to free up. That's why when you put a guy like that with an edge rusher, it gets dangerous.
If you don't have a nose guard, that shows me that there's a difference in the yards per carry you give up running the ball when he's in the game than when he's out. Then you can't run a 3-4 defense.
That's not a sacks or tackles thing.
It just means I'm literally. What I mean by that is that one guy is literally holding the point of attack by himself. Yep. He is that one guy when we were in school that everybody jumps on him trying to tackle him. You can't bring him down. If you don't have that guy in the middle of your defense in a 3-4, you can't run that defense. And that's what you mentioned. Vince Wilfork's going to be in the Hall of Fame because of this.
And a lot of it was because he was just physically so big.
Yep.
That you couldn't. But that was a great mention for that stat is yards per carry against.
Yes.
When someone's and that's not a stat you would think about as you look. You're not looking at speed or size.
The great Packers teams when Brett Favre was there.
Yeah.
And everybody talks about Reggie White, phenomenal, right? Who was the guy, the big fat nose guard in the middle? Gabe something was his name. Okay. Everybody forgets about him. Gilbert Brown was actually his name. Thank you. It was actually Gilbert Brown. Without, if they didn't have Gilbert Brown there, Reggie White would have had a lot fewer sacks. All right, because Gilbert Brown literally held the point of attack all by himself. That's what we're talking about. All right, great stuff, Kurt. We'll be back at it again tomorrow.
Fascinating stuff. I'm tweeting and YouTubing this one out because this is one of the places where I think our show is gonna be better than everybody else's in the sense that. You have an understanding of college football at a level very few people do, and I like just listening to it. So.
I appreciate that. Trust me, Google Kalen Saunders backflip today. You won't regret it. Okay? You won't regret it. Talk to you tomorrow.
And you are a nerd.